So another day at the boat. I've been now working on the electrics and installing the new console. If you check the last video, you will see that basically after using the old wiring as a guide and hooking up everything, basically nothing worked. I was able to start the boat, but the engine room fan was working, but that's about it. So I need to redo all of the electronics or wiring, and I've been now doing that for 2 days, and I can say that it has been a learning curve. And I will put here now a picture of how the wiring looked after the last video, after I did what I could with the wiring that was already there. So as you can see from the picture, it's not that nice. It's like just wiring goes everywhere. There is jumping connections to jumping connections, and there is like, it just doesn't work. So after now 2 days of working, and I was able to redo all the wiring on the boat, anything that's inside the console. Didn't touch anything that goes on the bilges or anything like that. Only thing I did was I was taking the wire from the alternator to the RPM gauge and got that working as well. So first let's take a look on how the wiring looks now. We'll put some light in here so hopefully you can see. So here is now the fuse box, and all the wires are labeled, and like if you look at the up, there is like I designed and 3D printed some wire, how do you say, like wire holders, and like used like bus bars when needed. And then on this side we can see there is like the USB charger, there is the fuel gauge, and there is the old hour meter, stereo, and then the instrument panel with the new RPM gauge. I still, this wire in here, I still need to attach it properly because there is so much tension on it that like with these 3M clips it will not hold. And here is also down is the bus bar for like the ignition on, so nothing comes on that shouldn't be on until the ignition is turned. So yeah, it looks a bit neater than before. And then let's take a look at the actual panel itself. So here is the panel. I ended up not building any kind of wall for the iPad because I can use the iPad cover that I have, and it just sits nicely in here. Some kind of phone holder here. It's not really holding up, but it works. Then I kept the heating unit in place because it would have been such a hassle to unhook all the wires and then reposition, and there is plenty of space for it there. Then in the previous video I was saying that I will put the old engine hours instrument panel somewhere around here, but because there was space for it, so it can stay in here. So we have the radio, the new switch panel, the fuel gauge, there is a USB charger here, the autopilot, and then the instrument panel. This is not attached yet because it's not the original Volvo Penta RPM gauge, which would have cost a shit ton of money. So I will use 3D printer to print like a spacer for it, that it will sit nice and tight in there. And then for the old position where I used to have the Raymarine autopilot panel, I have a LED switch panel coming, and I will put some indirect lights on the floors, and then also like behind here And then if we switch from this side also behind here, and basically it will have a RGB control, so it has like on off, and then you can choose the brightness and the colors for it. So yeah, well, now last thing to do is show you how it all works. So let's turn on the engine and let's hope you can still hear me. So you can see this is now the digital voltmeter showing that the batteries are charging. I have still one switch that is unused, but here is the windshield wipers. As you can see, it works. This is the autopilot just beeping. It requires a calibration, but I haven't still had the time to do it. Then here we have the nav lights, which I really cannot show from the inside, but yeah, it's the red and green and the angle light that's on top of the boat. Then this is the gauge lights. It's quite bright now, so but hopefully you can see that it has both gauges have red lights. And then this is the engine room fan, which you probably cannot hear, but it's there. And yeah, the stereo works, turns on, the engine hour gauge works, you can see the LED blinking in there. So yeah, I'm really happy, and like I can still demonstrate that there is like a, let's see if there isn't too much glare, but there is the digital hour meter on the gauge, and then also the RPM. If I put some more gas, you can see that the gauge goes up and down as it should. We still like probably still need to, let's turn it off. So it's not so noisy in here. So yeah, I still need to, because it's an aftermarket RPM gauge. So there is some tuning or settings, like, because it's anybody's guess which is the correct setting. So I'm basically going at that the idle RPM should be somewhere between 800 and 850. So that will be an indication. Well, I really don't need the RPM gauge, but it's one of those things that you can see some issues if it starts to like go from, let's say, I drive at 1500 RPMs and I'm doing 5 knots, and then 2 weeks later I'm driving 1500 RPMs and I'm only doing 4 knots. So then you can see that there must be something wrong with the prop or something else, or even in the engine. And yeah, and the big thing that was causing me headaches today, because today I only had to do the RPM connection from the alternator. And I was just wondering, like, how is it like the engine charging light isn't on, but when I was looking at the batteries with the multimeter, it shows like, okay, there is a little bit going charge to the batteries, but it wasn't as it should. And I was trying to diagnose, because the previous owner of this boat, I think it was last summer, he changed the alternator to a new one, and it turned out that there was nothing wrong with the old alternator. There was just some wire loose or something like that. And even when I bought this boat, it was like sometimes the battery charge light wouldn't turn off, but there was still like, it was charging, but it wasn't charging as it should. So I was doing some diagnosis on it, and thankfully I still had the old original Volvo alternator. So it was time to learn how to replace the alternator, and that was a project on its own. But when I got the new alternator installed, everything just works. The batteries are charging as they should, the RPM signal is coming as it should. So yeah, I learned so much during these few days about electronics, and now I know exactly how everything is wired. And if I ever need to troubleshoot something, I know exactly where to go and look for it. And yeah, so the next project will be the LED lights and the switch panel to here, and still some tinkering with the wires behind there to make it a little bit more presentable, get all the loose wires attached, and that it's all nice and neat. And yeah, that will be the next project, and who knows what will come after that. I'm just every day I feel like I'm figuring out something new, because there really isn't anything wrong with the boat. It's just that I really want to upgrade things, and of course at the same time I want to learn about all the systems. Like I have now a Japsco compact toilet seat. I want to change that to the regular size, because I don't know who's that compact toilet is made for, like, I don't know, 4-year-old kids. It's so freaking small. And then the other project will be that I have a sink. I can actually show it. So if we go to the bathroom, so this is the Japsco compact toilet, and as you can see it's small as hell. So that is a project on its own, but if we look at this side, there is the sink. This is really not in use at all, because we usually just wash the hands in the sink in the cockpit. So I'm planning to get rid of all of this, the sink, the hoses, and then I will put an outdoor shower on the other side. So I basically use these connections because it's connected to the hot water system. So then we can take a shower on the back deck if necessary, like coming from a swimming. It's nice to rinse off with some warm water, and this will also be like taking way less space. And the plan is to, if I get the regular Japsco seat, I will then turn this seat to be parallel with the wall, and then I could do some more tinkering and make stuff work better. But yeah, so that kind of projects. And then of course there will be on the first video I wasn't able to really tell it because it was so windy, but yeah, I will sand, re-glass where needed, and do like a proper base paint, and then like a gel coat on top of that for the whole deck. And yeah, those should be the project for the winter, and try to get everything done before the spring. But yeah, I think the next video will be when I install the LED, indirect lighting, and the switch panel for that. I didn't want to do any time lapse of now with the wiring, because it was so much like googling how everything works and trial and error, so it would be like 10+ hours of time lapse, so I don't think anybody would want to see that. But yeah, now if you have any questions and anything like that about the wiring, how to connect stuff and stuff like that, leave a comment below, and I will see you on the next one.